They called it the ship of dreams. Newspapers hailed it as unsinkable. Families sold everything they had just for a ticket, believing they were stepping onto a floating palace that symbolized progress, wealth, and safety. But behind the glittering promise of Titanic was a story that would end in one of the greatest human tragedies in history. The early 1900s was an age of ambition. Technology was racing forward, and nations competed to outdo each other with engineering marvels. Britain, determined to prove its dominance on the seas, unveiled the Titanic, a ship so vast, so modern, that it dwarfed every vessel before it. Nearly 900 feet long, 11 stories high, with dining halls that looked like royal ballrooms and staircases that rivaled the palaces of Europe. It wasn't just a ship, it was a statement to the world. Humanity could conquer nature. But here's the irony. While Titanic boasted luxury, it lacked enough lifeboats for all on board. Why? Because lifeboats cluttered the deck and designers believed they wouldn't be needed. After all, this ship couldn't sink. That single belief would seal the fate of more than 1,500 souls. Titanic wasn't built overnight. Thousands of workers in Belfast spent years riveting steel plates together, burning their hands and straining their backs. For them, Titanic wasn't luxury, it was survival, a wage to feed their families. They never imagined that their blood and sweat would be tied to such a catastrophic. When Titanic finally set sail from Southampton on April 10, 1912, it wasn't just a ship leaving port. It was carrying hopes, dreams, and illusions. On board were millionaires like John Jacob Astor, the richest man in America. But also poor families crammed in third class, desperate for a new life in America. Some carried nothing but a suitcase and a dream. All believed the Titanic was a safe passage to a better future. Yet from the very beginning, there were warnings. Titanic's sister ship, Olympic, had already collided with another vessel a year earlier. Engineers and sailors knew that no ship, no matter how large, was truly invincible. But pride blinded those in charge. Captain Edward Smith himself reportedly said, "I cannot imagine any condition which would cause this ship to founder." That confidence would cost him, and so many others, their lives. The Titanic wasn't just metal and rivets. It was a mirror of society itself. Wealth above, poverty below, and the belief that technology made mankind untouchable. But history was about to prove otherwise. April 14th, 1912. The Titanic sliced through the Atlantic like a floating city, glowing against the dark waters. On board, life felt like a dream. The rich dined under glittering chandeliers, sipping champagne while a string quartet played in the background. For them, the Titanic wasn't just transportation. It was a moving palace, a place where their wealth and status were put on full display. In a first-class dining saloon, meals stretched across 10 courses. Imagine lobster, oysters, roast duck, and French pastries served on fine china. Passengers wore their finest gowns and tuxedos, treating the voyage like a royal ball. To the wealthy, Titanic was proof that they were untouchable, surrounded by opulence, far removed from the struggles of ordinary. But below deck, it was a different world. In third class, immigrant families gathered in cramped quarters. Their meals were simple: stew, bread, and tea. Children slept side by side in narrow bunks, while parents whispered about the future they dreamed of in America. Life was harder, but even here, spirits were high. After all, they were on the most famous ship in the world, heading toward new beginnings. For many, Titanic was hope wrapped in steel. Still, there was something deceptive about this voyage. The ship moved swiftly through icy waters, but warnings of icebergs had already been received by radio operators. Yet those warnings were set aside, buried under a dangerous belief. Titanic was unsinkable. The captain and crew wanted to make headlines, arriving in New York ahead of schedule. Speed mattered more than caution. On deck, passengers strolled under the cold night sky, unaware of the danger that lurked ahead. Couples danced in the grand ballroom, while others wrote letters home, sealed in envelopes stamped Titanic. A band played softly into the night, their music drifting across the decks. The illusion of safety was everywhere, but illusions are fragile. At 11:40 p.m., while many passengers slept and others laughed over card games, the ship's fate was sealed. An iceberg, massive and silent, floated directly in Titanic's path. By the time the lookout spotted it, there was no turning back. The night of luxury was about to transform into a nightmare. 11:40 p.m., a calm, moonless night. The sea was so still that sailors called it like glass. In the crow's nest, lookouts Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee strained their eyes in the darkness. Suddenly, out of the black horizon, a shadow appeared. Fleet rang the bell 3 times and shouted down to the bridge, "Iceberg, right ahead." The order was given instantly. Hard A starboard. Engines reversed. Titanic began to turn, but it was too late. The iceberg scraped along the starboard side, ripping open the steel plates below the waterline. To many on board, it felt like nothing more than a slight shudder, a strange vibration. Glasses rattled. A few passengers stirred, but most returned to their games, their drinks, their beds. They had no idea that water was already rushing in at thousands of gallons per minute. Down in the boiler rooms, firemen and engineers heard the roar of seawater flooding compartments. Within minutes, 5 watertight sections were breached. Titanic was designed to stay afloat if 4 filled, but not 5. The ship was doomed. On the bridge, Captain Edward Smith received the devastating report. He knew instantly what it meant. The unsinkable ship was sinking. Yet to the passengers above, nothing seemed wrong. The music still played. The luxury still shimmered. The illusion of safety hadn't yet shattered. But behind the scenes, the crew worked frantically. Lifeboats were uncovered. Distress rockets were prepared. Wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride tapped out SOS signals into the night, praying that another ship might be near enough to respond. The closest, the Californian, sat just 20 miles away, but its radio was switched off for the night. Titanic's cries went unheard. Passengers began to notice something was wrong. The ship tilted ever so slightly. Corridor carpets sloped. Distant clanging echoed through the hull. Stewards knocked on cabin doors, urging people to dress warmly and put on life belts. Still, many laughed it off. Some even refused to leave their cabins. After all, this was the Titanic. It couldn't sink. But reality was undeniable. At 12:05 a.m., lifeboats began loading. Panic mixed with disbelief. First-class passengers, wrapped in furs, hesitated on the freezing deck. Third-class families were held back by gates, confused and terrified. No one was ready for the truth. There weren't enough lifeboats for everyone. The iceberg had done its job in less than 40 seconds. A gentle scrape that many hardly felt had set in motion one of the deadliest maritime disasters in history. The clock struck midnight, and the decks of Titanic transformed from elegance to chaos. Passengers rushed into the freezing night, some still in evening gowns and tuxedos, others in nightclothes clutching children. The band kept playing to calm the panic, their music floating eerily above the rising terror. But calm could not last. The truth spread quickly. There were lifeboats for just over half the people on board, and those boats were being launched half empty. Lifeboat number 1, capable of holding 65, rode away with only 28. Why? Because many still believed Titanic wasn't sinking. Why climb into a tiny wooden boat when the grand steel ship seemed so steady? That hesitation cost hundreds of lives. As the tilt grew sharper, desperation grew stronger. First-class passengers pressed toward the boats, their wealth and influence giving them an edge. But not all used it for themselves. Isidore and Ida Strauss, an elderly millionaire couple, were offered seats. Ida refused. "Where you go, I go," she told her husband. They stayed behind together, last seen holding hands on the deck. For those in third class, escape was far harder. Locked gates and confusing passageways delayed families, costing precious time. Yet many fought their way up, carrying children in their arms. Some made it. Many didn't. By 1:30 a.m., the bow was sinking lower into the sea. Freezing water crept across the decks. Crew shouted, "Women and children first." Fathers kissed their wives and children goodbye, forcing themselves to let go. One man handed his young son to a lifeboat and whispered, "Be good, my boy." Then he stepped back, knowing he would never see him again. And still the band played. Survivors remembered the musicians standing together, refusing to leave, offering comfort through music as the ship's end drew near. Their final song, many believed, was "Nearer, My God, to Thee." By 2 a.m., the Titanic's stern rose high into the air. People clung to railings, praying, screaming, begging for mercy. Others jumped, hitting the icy water like glass. At 28 degrees Fahrenheit, survival time was measured in minutes. Then came the final moments. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out. Darkness swallowed the ship as the stern lifted higher. With a thunderous roar, Titanic split in two. The bow plunged into depths, pulling hundreds with it. The stern, hanging for a moment against the stars, crashed back down before rising once more and disappearing forever beneath the waves. Silence followed. Over 1,500 lives lost. Barely 700 survived. The cries of the dying echoed across the ocean, haunting those in the lifeboats who could do nothing but drift away into the night. When the sun rose on April 15, 1912, the calm Atlantic revealed a nightmare. Wooden lifeboats floated aimlessly, filled with shivering survivors who watched in silence as the Carpathia steamed toward them. Rescue had come too late for most. Over 1,500 lives were gone. The unsinkable ship lay broken at the bottom of the ocean. But Titanic's story did not end there. The tragedy shook the world. Newspapers everywhere screamed the same question. How could this happen? How could the most advanced ship in history sink on its very first voyage? And why were so many left without a chance to survive? The answers led to change. Almost immediately, new maritime laws were enforced. Every ship was now required to carry enough lifeboats for every soul on board. Continuous radio watch became mandatory. No operator could simply switch off the wireless, as the Californian had done that. Ice patrols were created to monitor dangerous waters. Titanic's loss forced the world to confront arrogance and replace it with accountability. But beyond safety laws, Titanic left a deeper legacy, one of human courage, sacrifice, and memory. Stories of bravery emerged from the wreck. Fathers who gave up their seats so their children could live. Crew members who stayed behind to help others instead of saving themselves. Musicians who played until the very end. Their choices reminded the world that even in the face of death, humanity can rise to its highest self. And then there are the stories of survival. Women who clutched their babies as they rode away into the freezing night. Children who grew up carrying the memory of their lost fathers. Survivors who struggled with guilt, but also became living witnesses, ensuring the world never forgot. Over a century later, Titanic still captivates us. Not just because it was the largest ship of its time, or because it sank in such dramatic fashion, but because it represents a clash between pride and vulnerability, between human ambition and the power of nature. It's a reminder that no matter how advanced we become, humility and caution must never be forgotten. The Titanic may rest 2 miles beneath the ocean's surface, but its story rises above time. It teaches us about dreams, illusions, tragedy, and the unbreakable human spirit. Because in the end, Titanic wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of hope, arrogance, courage, and loss. And its legacy is carved not only into history books, but into the hearts of everyone who still whispers its name.